Welcome, Kath Keenan, CEO of Story Factory, I should say. It's not Sydney Story Factory anymore, is it?
That's right.
Welcome. It does say Kath Keenan, so I don't know how formal you want me to be, but I'm happy to go with Kath. But
I think it would be weird if you called me anything.
how are things?
Things are great, thank you. Yeah, they're good. It's been a strange time, but a good time.
It has been. For those that aren't aware, tell us a little bit upfront about Story Factory. Explain to us
Yeah.
what it's about.
So we're a not-for-profit organisation, and we run a really wide range of fun and engaging creative writing programs for young people. So we work with young people aged 7 to 17. We work with young people in communities that are experiencing socioeconomic disadvantage. We work with a lot of Indigenous kids, lots of kids from culturally diverse backgrounds, and most of our students now, about 80% of them, I think, are in Western Sydney.
Yeah, I mean, education and the teaching profession as a whole has received a fair bit of attention during these times. Everything from online learning, homeschooling. There's been a whole bunch of ideas and workarounds that have been put forward as potential new learning methods. Has COVID-19 challenged the traditional convention when it comes to learning and literacy, and how has it impacted you guys?
Yeah, I think it's so interesting the way it has changed all of that. I mean, I think the first thing that was challenged we were acutely aware of was this idea that you can just put schooling online and that will be some kind of simple process, whereas as all parents discovered, it's not simple at all, even when you do have the devices and you do have the data. But a lot of the kids that we work with had neither. So, we heard lots of stories about kids where there were, families where there were 5 kids and they just had mum's iPhone, and that's the only way of trying to access online schooling. So we were really aware of them. And when we spoke to the teachers, it was really interesting because I think sometimes there's a perception that the teacher's main job is the imparting of information to younger people, but so much of it is about connection. It's about being that person in their life that cares about them, being a person who asks them how their day is, who makes sure that they have breakfast. Like, there are so many other things that teachers do. And I think that was, when we spoke to teachers, what they were worried about with the digital programs and not being able to connect with their kids digitally was not that they would miss out on learning particular things, but that they would lose that connection with them, which was what kept them engaged in learning in the first place. A lot of people, they want to learn because they like their teacher, and their teacher respects them and treats them well, and that, I think, is easy to forget.
Yeah, it's an interesting point and an important one particularly for Western Sydney. That issue around online learning and the equity issues that might be attached to that, particularly for those that may not have internet access or not great access. You guys are at the coalface, seeing it and teaching it every day. What's your sort of view on and what would your message be back to government if it was to pursue a path that was focused more on online rather than having that physical connection that you talk about?
Yeah, look, I think, there's no question that our education system would be far poorer if it was all online. There is so much that is about interpersonal interaction. There is so much about that kind of human connection. I think it would be hard to find anyone who would argue that it's better online. It does have its advantages, and one of the small advantages that we have found actually is we run a number of our after-school writing programs online at the moment. And there are young people who, in those workshops, will speak up more than they would in person, because they can do it. They can do it with their camera off. They can do it in the chat function. So there's quite a few sort of introverted young people for whom it is easier to interact in that way. And that is an experience. We've spoken to quite a few different youth organisations across Western Sydney, and they've all experienced similar things. So that's a kind of slight upside. But, on the downside, there are a lot of kids who we couldn't connect with at all because they didn't have the ability to.
Yeah. We were talking offline a bit earlier about New South Wales government's recent curriculum shake-up, one that they've described as the biggest in 30 years, a back-to-basics approach to education. It's been fairly well received across the board, although some have sort of questioned its, reduced focus around creativity and some of the soft skills development. Do you have a view on that side of things? And is the curriculum based around the reading, writing, arithmetic, the 3 R's and STEM as we're moving towards? Is that the right approach?
Yeah, look, it sort of depends how it washes out, really. But I think, people have been saying for a long time the curriculum is overcrowded. It tends to be that something happens and then we get sort of shoved into the curriculum. And I think all teachers would say they have too much that they have to get through, and that is really a barrier for learning because they're having to kind of rush through things. So I think in general, that's a great idea. I sort of, it's not, I mean, I think an emphasis on, reading and writing and maths and things is fantastic. I find the whole idea that it's back to basics kind of slightly pejorative, perhaps is the word, or sort of there's nothing basic about being a really great writer. There's nothing basic about really understanding maths. Like, these are all important creative subjects, and really it's where you want kids to really shine. So I don't think it's kind of cutting things back to these bare bones, to some idea that it's just a sort of simple structures that you're putting together. I don't think that's a good idea, but I do think focusing on writing is fantastic, but give the kids space to be creative within that.
You mentioned earlier, and I mean, some of the great work you guys are doing impacts and has positive impacts on some of the most disadvantaged communities in the region, particularly in Western Sydney. You guys started out in Redfern, and I suppose outside of COVID, the other big issue that's being felt across the world at the moment is the Black Lives Matters movement. You guys started out in Redfern, have still got a strong base there. Obviously, and do quite a bit of work with Indigenous communities. What would you say to organisations like ourselves and others in Western Sydney about how we can empower those communities, provide them with a stronger voice, like what you're doing with some of the programs with Story Factory?
Yeah, it's a great question. Look, it's been a really big issue for our kids and for many of our staff. They've really found it a difficult time over the last few weeks, and it's caused a lot of thinking, a lot of thinking for our Indigenous staff, for our non-Indigenous staff, for our staff who are people of colour. It's really I hope it's a moment of change. And I think all that change has to start with listening. We have been trying really hard to listen to our Indigenous staff and to our board members and to our kids, and to hear how it's affecting them and how they want things to be different and what they want to change. So I just really hope that this sort of enormous kind of sort of upswell of feeling leads to real definite change.
Some action.
There's still so many barriers for Indigenous young people. It's just, it's unconscionable in a country as we Australia.
Yeah. On a more positive note, Parramatta. It's been 2 years since you've moved out west and had a lot of success. I know a lot of the guys you work with, Bilal, your chief storyteller, tells us often how great he is out there. Is it everything you expected? I know it was a sort of a bit of a watershed moment, moving from Redfern or doubling up and moving from Redfern out to the west. How have you found it, and where to next, I suppose?
Yeah, great. Look, it's unreal. It always feels like the West is this one thing, but as you know, it's so many different things. And so getting to know lots of different communities. We do a lot of work in Mount Druitt, in Campbelltown, in Blacktown, Bankstown, and getting to know all those different places has been really fantastic and really interesting. And meeting such a diverse group of young people has been really, we've loved it. We've all really enjoyed it. Where to next is a good question. I think in our 3-year strategy that we did in 2020, we had this idea that we would do a digital pilot, and we have done that on steroids very quickly in the last, 2 months, 3 months or so.
COVID has been good for something.
Yeah, it has been good for that. So I think there's a lot of things to learn from that, and again, sort of digital is also something that people tend to think of as like, oh, we'll go digital, but there's so many different ways in which you can do things digitally, and some of them are better than others, and some of them are easier than others. And so we're really trying to unpack now which bits have worked and which bits haven't, and why, and which bits can we use to, reach the kids in Kempsey where we can't be every week, and how do we do that effectively. So we are really interested in using this time to help us grow our reach over the next few years.
Well, if the last couple of years are any indication, Kath, I'm sure you'll get there. You made some great, giant strides over the past 24 months, and we're happy to help continue to support you where we can. Before we wrap up, we typically ask our guests to share a little bit of a personal insight into how they've managed during these COVID times. Can you tell us a bit about what you've been up to outside of work that's helped you manage and navigate this pandemic?
Yeah, that's it. I have 2 small kids, so I have one a 11-year-old and a 12-year-old. So when this first happened and I was at home with them, my respect for teachers grew even further than before. But then actually I really liked it. I really liked having them home. I really liked being able to see them more often. So I feel like in a way what got me through that first part was having more time with my kids and be always kind of rushing away to go here and go there. And that was actually kind of an upside for me.
Nice one. Well, thank you, Kath. It's been delightful as usual. Thank you for your insight. Good luck with next steps for Story Factory, and hopefully we'll get you back in the classroom fairly soon.
Yeah, thanks so much, Adam, and thanks so much to the Dialogue for the amazing support you've given us over many years.
Thanks, Kath.